would you say the memories of that time, because the feelings aren't there, it's almost as if that's a different person that you're thinking about.
Yep.
Like it's no longer
Yep.
who you are.
Yep.
Yeah. You're not the same person you were before.
Nope.
And this is over something that plagued you for 3 decades.
Yes. Yes.
It's pretty heavy.
And I never talk about it.
Sorry.
Okay. So as you can tell, we're trying to do something different today. Normally, the conversations are me interviewing Mike. But what we decided was, because Mike has been talking to Suzanne and working with Suzanne over some time. And when I asked Mike, hey, do you have anyone else that can talk about their experiences? And really, we're going to talk, I think, especially for the level 2 neurodivergent population, we're going to talk about spiritual awakening and, maybe a little bit of Suzanne's experience in this area. So maybe, Mike, do you want to say any, kind of introductory comments about this, or would you like me to just go ahead and, kind of share a little bit of my thoughts on the topic? However you want to do it.
Okay. So, yeah, on the advertising today, I introduced this as spiritual awakening for level 2 neurodivergence. And maybe you're wondering, what the heck is spiritual awakening and what does that have to do with me? And so that's a really, really, really good question. And so there's many different ways to define what spiritual awakening is if you talk to different people. And so the best way to describe the spiritual awakening for our purposes here at Light Minds, I equate it, and maybe some people disagree. So I'm going to use 2 words that you maybe hear in psychology circles and in spiritual circles. I'm going to use the word spiritual awakening and ego death. And to me, for the purposes of Light Minds and this particular live stream, it's pretty much the same thing. Okay? And so a spiritual awakening is basically where you really no longer believe that much that the thoughts coming out of your head are referring to you. They're referring to you as in, I am this body and that's all I am. And therefore, my husband's body that's who he is, and my daughter's body, that's who she is. And so the way the mind works, it only looks at the body to identify itself with. It doesn't understand or see spirit. And spirit, for the purposes of Light Minds, is simply anything that cannot be seen or measured with traditional or scientific tools that we have available. That's all that means to me. Spiritual spirit means anything that cannot be seen or measured through traditional or scientific methods that we have available today. Right? So what I'm saying, again, going back to the ego thing and the mind and stuff like that, is the mind only equates, when you think of, this is my family, this is my life, I live here, you live there, it only thinks of the body. It only thinks of, where is your body? It is in the United States. Therefore, I am in the United States. Does that make sense, everyone, what I'm saying here? And so an ego death is all of those thoughts about where your body is and what it's doing. There's something inside that just no longer quite believes that anymore. There's something inside that says, like, I am more than just this body. I am more than just this. And that is spirit. And then you start, so it's sort of like an identity switch from your mind rambling on about the problems of this body, the problems of the body of your family, your money situation, your health, which is important. I'm not trying to say it's not important. But for people with level 2 neurodivergence, when that is believed in too much or so much with strong emotional intensity, it really increases exponentially the suffering, the heaviness of feeling like you're a suffering person inside this body. So the mind's talking, I'm worried about this problem, this problem, this problem, this problem, and then something inside believes all the thoughts that comes out of the mind that says that stuff. And now to a level 2 neurodivergent with emotional dysregulation, that feels really like heavy, heavy suffering. And that's why people say, I'm suffering inside. I can't stand this. I'm always like this, and I really don't like it. This is terrible. Okay, so spiritual awakening is something inside starts to no longer believe that. It starts to realize, I think I'm partially spirit. I think I'm actually not even really just this body. And a spiritual awakening for a level 2 neurodivergent can be a very, very important thing, because now the intensity of the emotions around your story, who you are, where you live, who your kids are, who your mother is, who your partner is, the emotions around it, when you start to have the spiritual awakening or an ego death, is much, much less. Sometimes almost to the point where you can go through a life history story of your child abuse, say, and it's almost as if you're talking about a different person. The same emotions around it that you used to feel, this heavy sense of suffering, sadness, depression, anxiety, look what happened to me. It's like the emotions just don't come up, and it's almost as if you're talking about a different person. That's the beginning of an ego death, to me. That's what that is. Now, again, another person, another psychologist, another spiritual teacher, probably some of you online here, probably have a different definition, but this is our definition of it. Okay, so as we were going through all this level 2 neurodivergent somatic release work, sometimes people would show up on the comments, I had a spiritual awakening too, Mike, and that really helped me. I would say there was like maybe 30 people that said something like this on the comments. Like, I had a spiritual awakening and that really saved my life. I had a spiritual awakening and that really, really helped with my anxiety, and it really helped. I mean, it really saved me. And that's what happened here. I could say that to me, that's what happened here, that an energetic shift happened here through the somatic releasing. And now the thoughts of Mike, even though they can come with intense emotions and stuff like that, it's just no longer believed in as much that's all that I am. It's then if you ask me, well, who are you then? Well, then I would say, well, I guess I am also, or even more, spirit. I am more like I am the body, but I am also spirit. And it's all of this stuff that I'm saying is not intellectual at all. It's all intuitively experienced, emotionally understood. If you were to take away my ability to think about this and use any kind of thought to describe this, this would still be known. This is no longer a belief. Some people sometimes, oh, what do you believe in? You believe in God? A belief is still a thought that you strongly are emotionally attached to. This is no longer a belief. This is like known. It's just known intuition. So I should say that. As I say all of these words to describe what this is, if you were to take out all of my thinking, this would still be known as the truth, that what I really am is spirit. And this really saved a lot of the suffering in this body. Okay, and so that's why we're talking about spiritual awakening, and many people on the comments on some of my videos talk about it too, as if they had a spiritual, I'm pretty sure they did have a spiritual awakening as well. So now I brought in my friend Andy, who interviews me a lot. Sometimes you see him on the other platforms, sometimes you see him on the videos here, and a client of mine who I did the somatic releasing with. I've been doing it with Suzanne for 2 years now. She's been through this several times, and she also has had these huge emotional shifts. And so she's never really used the word spiritual awakening or ego death, but she can describe now what it's like in her life for this. So that's my explanation of it. All of this is going to go on a recording online, so if you've missed any of it, don't worry about it. You just listen to the recording later. So, okay, Andy, you can take it away.
Yeah. So what I wanted to do before we introduce and interview Suzanne, I wanted to say a few words, because I come, to kind of Mike's channel with a little bit of a perspective, more like a scientist, looking at it, maybe not skeptical, but just trying to understand like what's going on in your brain when these things happen, and how does a level 2 person respond to different situations. So I wanted to give a little bit of my perspective on this because it helps inform what's going on here. So there's something that actually most people don't know about the brain, and that is, it's not actually designed to see reality clearly. What it's really designed to do is keep you safe. And it does that basically by predicting what's going to happen next based on everything that's happened to you before. So every experience, every painful moment, every time someone let you down, scared you, made you feel small. Your brain like processed, filed that all away, and it's been using that ever since. So when something happens to you right now in this moment, your brain actually isn't responding to what's actually in front of you. It's running this pattern match. It's asking, okay, have I seen this before? Does this look like an experience I've had before? Does this feel familiar? And if the answer is yes, it instantly fires off a reaction before you even have a chance to think about this. So that's why, like, you walk into a room and you feel anxious and you don't really know why. Something subliminal is happening. That's why when someone says some like offhand comment and suddenly like you are flooded with emotion, it feels way too big for that situation. Your brain found a match in its archive and it reacted accordingly. Now, the brain doesn't just react, it also explains. So it builds a story around this reaction to kind of make sense of what just happened. So psychologists and neuroscientists, they call this the narrative self. Some people call it ego. But either way, the job's the same. You take this emotional signal, this feeling you have, and the brain creates a story, creates meaning around that feeling. Oh, he's angry at me. She doesn't respect me. I always get treated this way. This narrative is immediately like taking hold. And the problem is that story is not about what's happening right now in this moment. It's usually about something that happened in the past. Okay. So when you go through something that's really painful or traumatic, I think a lot of people, who follow this channel have had experiences like that. PTSD, complex PTSD, generational trauma, whatever it is. You haven't fully processed it. Maybe you're too young. Maybe it wasn't safe to feel that feeling. You had to push it down to survive. You just had to keep moving. And so when you don't fully process that emotion, that experience, it doesn't disappear. It's stored in the body. Mike talks about this a lot, like the body keeps the score. Your nervous system is holding that. Your brain is just doing what it's supposed to do. And that's like keeping that memory loaded so that if you need to protect yourself, it springs to action. It happens right away. So understand, like, you're not overreacting. Your brain is doing exactly what it learned to do. It's trying to protect you from something that it still believes is a threat. Even though that actual threat happened many years ago. It stopped being a threat, but you never had a chance to process it. So this is especially true for people who have nervous systems that are more sensitive. I think a lot of level 2 people have a very sensitive nervous system. And so your brain processes these emotions more intensely. The emotions hit harder. They're hit longer. It feels more destabilizing. So just understand, you're not broken. You're just running a more sensitive prediction engine. Your brain is working overtime to protect you. And these experiences that you had to adapt to, it's to protect your body to survive. And
actually,
so
let's
yeah.
say something here. If anybody has any questions as we describe this, please feel free to write in the chat. As because we're going to be doing a lot of talking. Suzanne's going to be coming on. And if something that we're saying, you have a question about it, you need some clarity around it, you don't quite understand it, we're going to answer as many questions as we can after this entire interview is done. Between the interview and the somatic release meditation, all three of us will do our best to answer questions for you. So just ask the questions in the chat. I will copy them out and paste them, and I will write them down, basically. I will write them down, and then we'll do our best to answer them. I just want to make sure that if anybody's lost right now, like someone is asking right now, is this the fight, flight, or dark night of the soul? So I'm writing all this stuff down right now. So you can continue, Andy. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. So basically, your brain is generating these stories, and because they come from inside these deep emotions, they're real. The emotion is real. The body sensation is real. You feel this way right now, but it's based on something that happened to you in the past. So really, this is kind of a lead-in to spiritual awakening in the sense that once you understand, like you recognize that your nervous system is pulling from this archive, from these memories, and if you could just release that emotion, complete that cycle, then your brain doesn't need to continue generating stories around it. So people who have undergone this spiritual awakening, they have then released that emotional energy, and they're no longer creating this narrative, a false narrative about who they are, what they do, what they should be doing, et cetera, et cetera. So that's maybe a little bit of a neuroscience introduction into, because there's a lot of carryover between spiritual awakening, psychedelic experiences, meditation, somatic release. These things kind of all overlap, but I think the basic science around what's happening in your brain is that you're creating this perceived reality. Okay. So that was just what I wanted to say, kind of a little bit of preamble. I think it might be good, Mike, for you to introduce Suzanne first, and then we can turn to the interview and I'll ask her questions.
Okay, great. So I'm going to introduce Suzanne now. Suzanne, you can turn on your video now. And she's been waiting backstage. And so basically, yeah, Suzanne is a client of mine who has worked with me for several years now. And she has done several somatic release meditations. The first one being in a group setting, but she did it individually while everybody was watching. And then maybe she might have gone through a few more groups, but then we began to meet one-on-one, and she did a few more individual somatic release meditations, and then began to report some quite sizable emotional, energetic shifts. And so everything that me and Andy just described right now, like, after you had these emotional shifts and release what I would consider trauma, which is unresolved emotions trapped in the body over certain events in your life, like she talks about, like the way she thinks about her life and the stories that she used to say to herself, they just come in totally differently now. And it's quite changed, not just the way she feels inside of her, in her body and her emotions, how she reacts to her own thoughts, but she says it's also sort of changed her life as well. And so we just wanted to share this with you. And the goal of this whole talk, really, in my opinion, the goal of this whole interview and this talk is we would love for you to try the somatic release meditations out. And there are many people on here who do. There's a playlist in the TikTok account for Light Minds with like 4 or 5 somatic release meditations. Try one of the long ones, and and really engage with it. Just don't do it skeptically or with defensiveness or with some kind of mental defense mechanism up. Really, just put your mind to the side and really try to engage with it. That's what the goal of this interview, this talk is designed to do, is just to have you try out the somatic release meditations. So yeah, Suzanne, is there anything that you'd like to say about yourself before Andy starts interviewing?
Yeah, why don't I just lead in and I'll ask her questions and we can take it from there. So maybe the first thing is I just wanted to thank you for joining. It's tough to put yourself out there and share these, kind of personal experiences. Mike and I both believe that there's a lot of value in people understanding this. And so first, I just want to say thank you for doing that. And I will ask you questions, and it's part of my role is to try to get some of these stories out. So if you don't feel comfortable about saying something, it's okay to say, you're not really comfortable about that. These are very deeply personal, topics. So I just want to put that preface out there. I always want you to feel safe, only say what you feel comfortable with.
Thank you.
Okay. With that preamble, can you maybe say a few words of how did you come to work with Mike? What were you looking for? What made you decide that you wanted to, seek some help or, Mike's, method? What brought you to Mike?
Okay. Good question. So I'm happy to be here, and thank you for making me feel comfortable, Andy. I appreciate that. I came into contact with Michael because I have a son who is dealing with the challenge of substance use, and it wasn't so much. It was the substance use, but it was also the longevity. 10 years in, and we were still dealing with ups and downs, and I think it was really taking a toll. Okay, so I'll get right into it. So I don't know if our time is limited here. So Just
When
have
it comes to spiritual awakening, there is no time. So
Yeah.
don't worry.
Yeah, so I came to know Michael. I needed support. I needed help. Actually, when I got involved in, I was looking for something to help me deal with my son who was dealing with the challenge of addiction. And I got involved in a program called The Balm. Michael is very involved in that. And one of the programs that Michael gives is what we call the 7 steps. And that is when I was able to have my first, well, we call it a somatic release. I had no idea what it was back then, but we go through a 7-week program where we really, Michael helps us to find the peace. He helps us to meditate. He helps us to deal with our feelings. And all of that is because we want to learn how to communicate better with our loved ones, and to communicate with them in a non-judgmental manner. And to be able to do that, we really have to be able to understand what our feelings are and deal with them so that we're not, putting our feelings on our loved ones.
Maybe can you say a little bit more about that? So your son had, issues, but you had feelings within yourself. Like you felt
Yes.
powerless, frustrated. Can you maybe just share like what was going on in you, you emotionally, not your son, but like how did you feel?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry I lost you, but Andy, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So,
What
but I
were
heard
your
your
feelings?
question. I did hear your question about what was going on with me. And yeah, well, sometimes I felt like I was losing my mind because I was just so stressed out about the everything that was going on with my son. There had been some good periods, some bad periods. The relapses were long relapses, year relapses, homeless relapses. So it took its toll. And I'll be honest, when I got into the balm, my son was doing great, and I got into the balm thinking, oh, this is lovely. I'm going to give back to other people who are having problems. And my son, relapsed when I was in the program, and it was just a terrible, it was just, for me to deal with my son that was homeless, and it really was life or death every single day, was difficult. So that's why I got into the balm, and that's why, part of the balm is taking this 7 steps program. And Michael was looking for a volunteer at the end of the 7 steps when we learn how to, I don't know, it was all foreign to me. I mean, I came into the balm not knowing what self-care meant. I came into the balm being the type of person that is going to fix everything, bring it on, whatever problem there is. I'm organized. I know what to do. I'm going to do it. And, dealing with addiction, that's just not what happens. It's everything but. So I went through the 7 steps, which really did help me to find some type of peace. And Michael was looking for a volunteer for week 8. 7, we finished the program. Week 8, he was looking for volunteers. So I figured, why not? Had no idea what I was really volunteering for. And that was when Michael took me through that meditation. And I think it was just surreal. It was really surreal. The questions he asked, and just feeling the emotions of having a son that is out there. Just the trauma for myself, just the feeling of no control, not being able to do anything. So I don't know, long story short, he took me through the somatic release. There were tears. It was in a group setting, as Michael said. And I don't know, at the end of that, it was very heavy. And it was just like a release. It was and then that night when I got off the phone or the group, I, was spent. I had no energy left. I had a massive headache, and I went to bed. And then the next day, that's how quick it just felt. So different. It just felt different.
Can you describe, before the somatic release, you had a lot of fear about your son, guilt, concern, stress, and during the somatic release, as Mike guided you through that, all these emotions came out and you just had this like release of all that energy. Is that what happened?
Yeah. And I mean, I was in it, so I can't, I just remember just crying profusely. And I don't know, it was all these feelings that were it was nonstop. It was like, it was sad that it's happening. It was fear. It was guilt. I will say that the thing that I remember with Michael, because when you go through it, you just, I don't know, the feelings were very, very heavy. At the end, Michael, I remember you saying something like, what's the worst that's going to happen? I left that somatic release knowing, Andy, that my fear and my worry was coming from the fact that I might lose my son. That was it. The fear of going on in life without my son around, because life and death is something that we deal with every day when you're in that world. And when I finally came face to face with the fact that, this is it, it just changed things for me. And I don't know. That's all I can say.
That?
I don't even know what else to say.
Continue. So you had this very, very like significant emotional release. You felt spent afterwards, and yet the next day you felt much lighter. Can you describe how different that was? Before, you were worried if your son is going to survive. Every day you're worried about it. It's not, how can you stop worrying about that as a parent? Like, obviously you still care about your son.
Yeah.
You don't want him to die. Yeah. Like, how is it that you could actually be lighter about something so serious and so significant? Can you even describe, like, how does that occur?
Yeah. I don't know, Andy. It's something that it's just, I don't know. I just feel at peace with whatever is going to happen. I feel, even now, the way things are, like, we're in a situation now where before that somatic release, I probably would have been just like going 100 miles an hour, being Suzanne, trying to fix everything, trying to contact people, trying to figure things out. How can we do this? How can we do that? And now I just feel like it is what it is. I love him, and I think about him every day. I do. I mean, if this is not a question of thinking about him or loving him, there's absolutely, positively no doubt that I think about him, and I am here to help for sure in a heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
But that stress and that feeling of, I've got to do something, I've got to fix it. It just goes right, it would go right through my body. I could feel that tension and that stress. And I would walk in the door and the first thing I would talk about is, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? This is happening, blah, 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 blah. And now I don't. I just don't, because I just feel that, I don't know. It's just so different, and it's just so hard to explain. It's really hard to explain, Andy.
Can I ask you, did you feel a lot of guilt? Did you blame yourself for your son, having this addiction? Were you carrying around that, burden before?
So I didn't carry, you know what? I have another somatic release that was even more, even bigger than the one I had about my son. It was about my daughter, and she doesn't use substances. And there it was guilt. This here was more, I think it was fear. It was fear. It was the fear. I didn't feel guilt that I had. It was the fear of losing him, the fear of that life and death, and that I've got to do something. I've got to save him, and that is what it was. It was the fear of losing him and the fear of spending the rest of my life without him around. Not because I needed him and I can't live without him, but kind of, yeah. He's my son, and I love him, and I want to save him. I want to do something.
Yeah. But through the somatic release, you no longer had that same level of fear. You had more of an acceptance, that
Yep.
it's going to be okay no matter what.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
interesting.
And people are very, very different. And I mean, my higher power is God. I wasn't really, I didn't grow up very religious in my family, and I never thought these kind of words would be coming out of my mouth, but they do regularly. I feel comfortable giving my son to God I just feel comfortable knowing that someone is there that has a plan that is bigger and that everything's going to be okay in the end. It's just whatever's going to happen somehow is going to happen. And that has translated in my life right now. Just doesn't matter if it's work, doesn't matter what it is. It just is what it is. And it's really, it's surreal to even try to explain it because for me, it's tough to explain. I mean, you came on with all the biochemical, I don't know, and then Michael came on differently, and I'm coming on just telling you this is what I'm feeling or not feeling.
Yeah, I mean, you had also mentioned that you had a very significant, shift regarding your daughter, and you don't have to get into the details, but was it similar in the sense that there was some emotion that was trapped inside of you, and that got released, and that brought a peace afterwards?
Yeah. I think that was even more surreal for me, and I'll tell you why. When I dealt with Michael the first time, and I was that volunteer, the somatic, like the way I felt moving forward with that was like, it was just a feeling of peace, which was amazing. And I thought to my mind thinking, I've been dealing with this for 10, 11 years. And finally I realized that something might happen. I'm going to be okay. I don't know. There was something but it somehow kind of felt not normal, but just, it felt okay. It just felt normal in a way because, I've dealt with this for so long, and now I did this thing with Michael, and everything's going to be fine. With my daughter, it was different. And I went to Michael because when I saw the transformation, not only with that one somatic release, but I had done a couple of other ones in group format with Michael. And every time I would think about something, there'd be tears in my eyes, and I'd feel so much better at the end. So I went to Michael with something that was just so, it was my daughter. When she was younger, she was diagnosed with a rare illness. And it was something I had never talked to anybody about.
So you don't have to
Do you feel comfortable
details.
continuing?
Yeah, it's okay.
You don't have to share the details if you don't.
Let's talk maybe at a higher level, that it was something that had troubled you very deeply, whatever it was.
Yes.
And through this process, you were able to release that emotion in some very profound way. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then after this somatic release, then it changed you. Like you had a much different, you were much lighter regarding this topic. You didn't feel the same.
Yeah. It was huge. It was just huge. And when you talk about guilt, there was sadness and there was guilt. And I think what shocked me was not knowing how significantly what happened, my goodness, 30 years ago was affecting me now. I talked to Michael about it thinking, may as well try to talk to him about it because I knew it was heavy on my mind. But, my daughter she's doing well. She's healthy now. She's happy. She's living her life. She had, some really, she had 3 surgeries, which did change her life. And you would think as a mother that I would just be, oh my gosh, this is great. She's happy. She's doing what she has to do. She's got a great life. And I didn't feel that way. And when I talked to Michael, I did the somatic release. There was it was like, I just realized it was the guilt of thinking, like, did we make the right decisions? Did we have to have those surgeries? Was it really necessary? And then the sadness of, why couldn't she have gotten sick 15 years later when there were better technologies, and maybe she wouldn't have had to have those surgeries? So there was a myriad of stuff. And the somatic release was so intense and something that I wasn't expecting. I wasn't expecting it to be more intense than the somatic release I had with my son, to the point where, we lost our connection, me and Michael, on the,
It affected the electronics.
Yeah, we
that
just
were
lost
trying to
power.
communicate.
It was just incredible.
Right when she was releasing, her feed went dead.
It was incredible.
And when she came back up, asked if there was anything wrong with the watch. Like, well, is there a storm there or anything? Like, no. But it was right when she was releasing.
Yeah.
And so by the time from my point of view, by the time she came back on, she had not even gone through the somatic release session. So I was asking, do you want to start it now? And then she checked herself and said, no, I think I'm good.
It was incredible. It was really incredible, Michael. It was incredible. And then that night, when I spoke to Michael, it was just that night. It wasn't just a headache. It was like shaking, going to the bathroom. I just felt like I was just, I don't know. I felt like, I don't know what was coming out of me. I just don't know. I felt like I was in a movie, one of those movies where, these people just have everything coming out of them. That's how I felt. It was surreal. It was just so surreal.
Yeah.
And today, the difference with my son, because my son, we're still in the thick of things. The difference with my daughter right now is that I can't even feel those feelings even if I want to. I can't find them. I keep saying, okay, well, aren't you, like, how do you feel about your daughter and, the fact that she can't that because of this? Like, I don't feel it. I can't even get those feelings anymore because I just feel that it was meant to happen and everything's okay and that's it. I can't even feel those feelings anymore.
That's amazing.
Would you say the memories of that time, because the feelings aren't there, it's almost as if that's a different person that you're thinking about?
Yep.
Like it's no longer who you are.
Yep.
Yeah. You're not the same person you were before.
Nope.
And this is over something that plagued you for 3 decades.
Yes. Yes.
It's pretty heavy.
And I never talk about it. And, tonight again, I'm talking about it. But I told nobody except for my immediate family. Like, nobody knew. It was something that was just so heartbreaking. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. Maybe, Mike, do you want to kind of summarize and reflect so that the audience can understand kind of a little bit more about what Suzanne experienced and, what that means? I think it relates to people who follow the channel and watch the videos probably have a good idea, but maybe you can just verbalize, okay?
So the somatic release meditation, again, the goal of this whole talk is to encourage people to try the somatic release meditations that are in the playlist called Meditations. And if you want to DM me also, if you're having a problem with it, I'd be willing to try to work one-on-one with you as well. But the whole idea of them was just to release unresolved feelings inside from an event or series of events. So unresolved feelings from difficult events in our lives, I would call a trauma. And they just sort of really just get lodged in the body. So the book, The Body Keeps the Score, they are finding out now that these unresolved feelings are in the body. They can cause inflammation, stress-related illnesses, recurring illnesses, chronic pain, or just an overall sense of just like an undercurrent of worry, something unresolved in the background. You just feel heavy. And so the way they're released is simply by feeling them. And so the somatic release that we do does that as gently as possible by bringing up this thing that we call the meditative peace, or the peace of the universe, or just the peace. And that helps to not only cushion you as you process these emotions, because the way you actually resolve them once and for all, just like what happened that Suzanne was describing them, is to physically bring them up and allow yourself to complete the feelings process that it should have gone through all those years ago. And maybe at the time you couldn't. You had to actually functionally suppress it because, well, Suzanne's in a situation where she's caring for her children, so she couldn't necessarily, do this kind of difficult work then. So you have to sometimes functionally suppress it, keep it in your body until it can be released later on. And this technique, this somatic releasing, can do that. Now, when it gets released, emotions are energy. Everything is energy, and emotions are energy too. I would say even emotions are sort of like a spiritual energy, you could say, because when they're released, people who are really attuned to other people's emotions, sometimes you can walk into a room and just feel a bad vibe, or maybe you said something like, I just have a bad feeling about that guy, or something like that. Like, people who are gifted at feeling other people's energies and stuff can sometimes say these things, or you might even, just walk into a room and just feel off. Something's off in there. So that, that's the emotions that are emanating in the air and stuff. So what Suzanne described with the computer going off and stuff actually is not surprising to me, because I was working with another gentleman in which his phone went dead at the exact time he was doing the releasing. I lost him on the call. We were on Zoom. I lost him. He came back on the call and he said, my phone went dead. And I said, you got to plug your phone in. Just make sure your phone is always charged when you're doing these sessions. And he said, it was charged. It was charged. It was actually plugged in. And he's actually told me to this day that phone was zapped. It's broken now. Like, it's no longer working, that phone, after that time. And so, it can easily go out into the atmosphere. And so things affecting electronics like that, it doesn't surprise me. And Suzanne has had other results of this somatic releasing, not just problems, not just problems hearing her on the internet and Wi-Fi calls. If she wants to describe other things, like in your relationships at work, or certain things in your life at work has changed, right? You've described that too?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm a professor, and the last term I had was just, it was really surreal. I've always been good with my students and, a really nice person. And this time was different. It was like, I had students staying after class. I had students asking for a Zoom call, and it wasn't to talk about school. It was just to talk about personal, to share, what was going on at home, to share. It was like people, I just felt like people felt comfortable just wanting to talk to me about certain things, and talking with Michael said, well, maybe it's just, I don't know, the piece that I've encountered, and the fact that I'm just very open to listen. I'm not sure. It just, I really noticed a difference with my students. I'm a part of a group that I've gone to on a regular basis, and I had people come up to me and go, there's just this aura about you, I can't explain it. And then they were asking me to join their other groups to help with ADHD children and their families. And I don't know, I find that life is just, it's changed. It's just changed. I've just started a new job, a part-time, and big learning curve, which I love. But normally, oh my goodness, having to go to a meeting and be 3 days off-site at a meeting, not really knowing my stuff and being really at the top of my game, I'd be totally stressed. And just, my husband was surprised to see me going to this meeting going, well, you know what, it is what it is. I know what I know. And, I know a lot, so I'll be good. Normally, I would have been, in my previous jobs, they called me the Tasmanian devil, not because I'm a devil, but because I go and I go and I go and I go. And I just don't go like that anymore, because it's just different. It's really hard to explain, but it's just different. And I attribute it to Yeah. Go. And
You're just calmer,
I don't know.
more relaxed, more, yeah. I was going to say that I think that
Yeah.
maybe it's your, the experience, the somatic release, but I think your personality is very open. You have an open heart, to share such deeply personal experiences, publicly. I think people can sense that energy within you, and they can see that you are a welcoming, open person. That makes people want to engage with you and talk to you. You are transmitting that kind of
Uh-huh.
like energy, that vibe, to others. So I think I think that's great. I think that's amazing. Yeah. Mike, is there anything else that
Yeah,
you
and I think
wanted
what's
to
different
say
though,
about
Andy,
that?
is I think I've been like
Mhm.
that.
Before? Hmm. Yeah, go ahead, please. Oh, I lost her again.
Going out again.
Yeah.
You can use the same link to come back on again. We can hear you on TikTok just fine. But we can start, yeah, like talk about a little bit, bringing this back to the spiritual awakening after what Suzanne has described here. Um, so what happens a lot? Oh, there she is. She's coming back on now. So what happens a lot after a person goes through a somatic release? And they may need several. I should say this. It's not just one. So Suzanne went through like maybe 5 or 6 of these things.
Yeah.
On different topics. So what happens after the release is this feeling of emotional heaviness just decreases. Like, and I've heard spiritual teachers say, you don't know the effects of feeling like you're a person in the body, of your ego holding on to these stories with all this painful emotion until it's not there. Like you don't realize that you're carrying all this until it's, and it does feel like a weight has been lifted off. I've had somatic releases where sometimes I felt like I should check myself on the bathroom scale just to see if I've lost weight, because you just feel lighter inside. And certain topics that don't come with that heaviness anymore. The way she described what happened with her daughter and thinking back on it now, it's like it's a different person. That's exactly the way I feel about my past physical child abuse. And I used to talk about that in a way in which you would have thought it happened just last week, the way the emotions would come out, because they were never fully resolved or processed. And I should say that I had been in therapy for this kind of thing for over a decade. Traditional talk therapy, trauma therapy even. Something where the person's talking to me and trying to get me to express the emotions through talking. This is totally different than that. This was like, it got resolved in like hours doing it through somatic releasing. So, and then after that, certain things, I should say this now, because people who are maybe on the spectrum neurodivergent, especially level 2, you might be thinking, oh, I'll have just calmer emotions now. You will when it comes to certain stories you have about yourself, abuse stories. Maybe you have a story about your relationship with your mother, your relationship with your partner, your relationship to your work, your boss, or something like that. The emotional heaviness around those stories that you always say to yourself will decrease, and the reactions can soften. But I should say, for neurodivergence like ADHD, autism, these are nervous system genetically inherited neurophysiological conditions. People who are autistic, we just happen to have more nerve endings in our brains, in our nervous systems, than other people, because our brains don't really prune. And that's why autism, they're saying that's one of the foundations of autism, is the nerve endings don't prune. So you physically have more nerve endings than other people. So what I'm saying is your body will still react to stuff. Like, there's a sudden thing that, like a sensory trigger, things that autistically bothered you a lot, that'll still happen. The difference is, what's gone is that sense of this heavy, suffering person who's just, it's like, what I say is like, it doesn't change that, but it changes how you feel about it, how you think about it. And so what I tell people is like, if you have, say, type 1 diabetes, it doesn't change your type 1 diabetes, but it changes your relationship to it, how you think about it. You don't think of yourself as this kind of suffering person. Or even if you do, when it goes up and it goes down, you set back to this peaceful baseline of emotion that wasn't there. It is almost like a nervous system resetting. Once you take some of the trauma energy out of the body, your nervous system resets to a lower baseline. You're still autistic or you're still ADHD, but you start, just at a lower baseline. So, but this also doesn't discount using psych meds or exercise or just getting good diet, sleep, and exercise. These are all also things that are helpful for your nervous system as well. Just people feel more peaceful though. So I would say, Suzanne, when you say, like now when you think about things with your family or things with your job, you just sort of set it like, we'll just see what happens. Let's go with the flow. We'll see what God has planned. You're not trying to plan things in there as much in your head. And before, you probably used to be a very meticulous planner. And so, I mean, you teach business, so I'm pretty sure you would teach a lot of detail on what to, look out for and out for in the future. But now you're going into your life later in life, starting a new career, still dealing with issues with, your son. But now there's just something that just sort of says inside, let's just see how this goes.
Yep.
I mean, yes, I will react. I will respond. I'll do what I need to do, but no need to overthink it. No need to start over planning and analyzing it. Let's just see how this goes. Right? Would you say?
Yeah. Oh, 300%. Yes. Yes. And it's a beautiful way to feel. And yeah, it absolutely. Absolutely. It's so, and I was coming into this, and I'm a person that never did meditation, never did yoga, never did, self-care was a word that just didn't even exist in my vocabulary. And now things are just, life is just different. And yeah, the new job I started last week, and it's so different. It's just so different. And for people to, at least try to do this somatic release. And now I talk that way too when I talk to people. It's okay to cry. It's okay to feel your feelings. Just let go. It's okay. Because, usually we're sort of like, oh my gosh, you're going to be okay. Or even for myself, my way was burying myself in work. Like, things are not going well with my son. So I got a new job now. I'm just going to go. And I'm just not like that. And I don't have any need to find out about every little thing that's going on. Like, I don't need it. Sometimes I even feel guilty not wanting to know. But I don't feel that need anymore to get to the nitty gritty and and control it all. It is what it is. And, I just believe that things are going to be the way they're going to be. And it has nothing to do with not feeling anymore. I mean, I got emotional tonight. I don't usually talk about what happened with my daughter. I mean, I dealt with it. I don't feel that guilt. I don't feel that sadness. And I'm really not used to talking about it because I don't go around talking about it because there's no reason to. So thank you, Andy, for jumping in and helping me get through that part. But I really never really talk about it. I just don't. There's no reason to.
Yeah. There was a question in the chat.
There's a bunch of questions, actually.
Do you want to ask them? Go ahead.
Yeah, I can ask them. And some of them are for Suzanne. So, one of them was, Suzanne, did you ever have trouble? I doubt if this has ever happened in your past. Did you ever have trouble getting out of your thoughts and just being present with the body?
All the time. I mean, that was me. There's, I would I never meditated. I never tried to find that peace. I was always in my thoughts. Always thinking about, what's going to happen. And people knew me that way. And if something is going to happen, we're going to be really proactive now. We're going to think about everything that could possibly happen. And we're going to make sure that it doesn't, because I'm going to fix it all before it even has a chance of happening. So that's really in your thoughts. So yes, in answer to your question, all the time. And you know what? It's exhausting. So I'm happy that, I still think, but not the same way.
And after the somatic release, then the question was, did it start working immediately? Like, immediately after the somatic release, you stopped having those same, thoughts or feeling, not, I don't know if it's not having the feelings, but having the
Well,
mental
yeah,
stress?
that's a good question, Andy. In the beginning, the first somatic release was with my son, and then things changed and it was different. And then I led my life, and then I went back for, and I would continue to do it with Michael. And the more I did it, the more I just kind of released, and the calmer I got. And for me now to, the question, were you always in your thoughts in the past? Right now, I can sit and I can find that peace like immediately. I don't. It really is surreal. I don't even know how to explain it somehow, but it is surreal. That's how surreal it is. I mean, I never thought that I would be on a podcast talking about this because it's just so not me.
Yeah. It's
I mean,
funny
you could
because
also say that there's an initial, like, feeling of peace, like within a day or two
Yes.
after. But I do tell people, just continue to process your emotions in the background. Use the somatic release as a tool.
Yep.
And I think Suzanne has found, even you have found, Andy, that over the weeks and months, and now it's been like a
Yep.
year, you realize when you look back, like, overall, you just feel more peaceful. You just feel calmer over many things, not just what the original topic that you talked about initially with your son and, those issues. Now, like at work,
Yep.
your family, and just in general, moving forward with your career. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. What came to my mind is that when people think about spiritual awakening, or they think about someone who is quote unquote enlightened, you think of someone who is just at peace, one with the universe, everything's calm, but you don't have any sense of how do they get to that place? Like, how do they achieve that, or how did they become that person? So this is what's interesting about your story, Suzanne, is like you would, when I think of someone who has had like a spiritual awakening or some kind of like experience like that, I think of someone in a shaved head in a robe,
Very zen.
Yeah. And you are, a professor, you're doing your thing, living your life, but you had something that people would call a spiritual awakening. Like, I don't know if you define it that way, but some people would look at that and say, yeah, that was a very significant shift in something. And you are now a much different person.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, her internal guidance system now is like, going with the flow. It's just the way life is. You don't get upset. And these are the same ways. If you went to some non-dual spirituality teacher, this is the way they would talk. They just don't get as upset over everything. They don't, and especially about the thoughts. They're just not, you don't feel that egoic machination in your mind when there's a problem or there's something to do in the future. It just doesn't occur. Or if it does, there's very little emotion attached to it.
I think for the people who watch these videos, a lot of them are level 2, and they do have a lot of stuff going on, a lot of emotional dysregulation, wide swings of emotions, things that trigger them, things that happen. And so to the extent that somatic release would help them achieve something, similar, that would be, if they could experience it. And I think that's why people are, Mike is encouraging people to just give it a try. It might help you. You never know until you try it. It's hard to hear it being described. It's one of the things you have to actually experience yourself to really fully understand.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. These are like these shifts that we're describing. In my opinion, you don't get there by doing talk therapy on it or intellectually telling yourself the right thing to think about a problem and then it just calms you down. It's almost purely from an emotional, energetic point of view. There's very little talk therapy or analyzing of the situation involved. We just target like what the emotion is and just do our best to release it. And people have put down in the chat sometimes in the somatic release videos, like one person did put down the kind of emotion that I release and the way I feel right now, it would have taken me 6 months of meditation to do that. And it just happened in like half hour. Because it targets the emotion. Meditation can do the same thing, but it because we're doing it in such a targeted way with the emotion and with that specific topic or problem the person's bringing, at least that topic is resolved. And I should say that, when a person goes through the entire process with me, and they don't stop it, and they don't fall asleep, and they don't think it's stupid, like they don't make any comments during it, and they really engage, they at least have more peace over that particular topic, if
Hmm.
not in other parts of their lives. So I could say like the success rate of this somatic release facilitation, when you really engage with it, is like 90-95% successful when you engage with it, when you don't like doubt it, and you don't poo-poo it, and you don't stop it in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think that's one of the things I want to say is, for myself anyways, yes, this first somatic release, it helped me to deal with my son and everything that was going on. It was just chaos. But it's not like after that, it was just like peaceful. It was peaceful. I was different with that particular topic. And then I talked to you about my daughter, and then there was another somatic release. And then there was, I was in groups where I would just go through the somatic release or the meditation that you do, Michael. And there would always be tears in my eyes. Like, it's incredible to know how much you really have in there. Like I don't think we realize, because we go, and we never stop to feel. We just don't. And then now, like, after going through it once or twice or 3 times, like now it's just, I don't know. That is where I just feel this peace. I feel like, and I've talked to you about other experiences where, just, out of body experiences, and it's really, it's like, it's surreal for me to be talking about this, because I don't know. I just don't come from that kind of background. I was never interested in yoga. I was never interested. It was just so not me. Anyways, yeah, it's
But
surreal.
I think to me, it's a sign, or it's an indication that anyone could have this kind of a release. Like, it's not just for people who are doing yoga or meditating or into Eastern philosophy or whatever. Anyone, any walk of life, anyone, if you're willing to feel your emotions, and just really release them, they could also, experience this.
Yeah, that's nicely said. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't, yeah, the word spiritual awakening, just like the word God, it just brings up all these different interpretations. That's one of the reasons why I do like calling it somatic release, because it just gives it a very neutral, almost clinical facilitator way of putting it. And then also, even that we just call it the peace instead of like God or Buddha, or we could use those words, but when you just call it the peace, it's pretty non secular. People accept that. And the purpose of this is, yeah, I don't want people to think I have to be Christian or I have to be Buddhist or I have to even want a deep spiritual life. You just really want just the motivation to resolve your emotional issues once and for all, and having the bravery to look at them dead on is all you really need, no matter who you are and what stage in your life you are in.
Yeah, that's something that I'm struck by. Is I think there is a lot of crossover between, these kind of Eastern meditation kind of practices, modern neuroscience. It's kind of like what I was talking about earlier. Like, you're carrying around this emotional pain and suffering, and your mind is always kind of ruminating on these things. And once you're able to actually just like process that and release it, then your brain doesn't have to go through that process anymore. It's already dealt with it, and then your mind is at ease. So there's a lot of like science around this. It's not a religious thing. It's just, this is how the brain and the body work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we talk about generational trauma a lot, and that you could say that's in the Bible as sins of the father, but it's now just an accepted fact of human biology that's taught in the college level, that generational trauma is a real thing, and people pass their traumas down to their children, and this can be a way to begin releasing them and resolving them. It does give a lot of hope for people who are level 2 neurodivergent, people who have addiction issues, have a severe emotional dysregulation, that there's something that you can do in addition to other things. And I don't want to tell people or have people think this is the only thing that you need. This is not a replacement for any kind of mental health services you have that work for you, or any kind of spiritual services or exercise things that you do. I see it as a supplement to that, another helpful tool for that. But it does seem to have this kind of therapeutic effect.
Mhm.
You know, you could say like it is like a spiritual awakening for a therapeutic effect.
Yeah.
I guess you could call it, is like somatic releasing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I think that's a really good place to maybe wrap up. So I would just say, Suzanne, thank you so much for joining. I think it was really great, you know, and we appreciate you opening up and sharing such deeply personal,
Thank you.
stories. Yeah.
Thank you for
Yes,
having
yes.
me. Thank you so much. You made
Yeah,
it
and
easy, so thank you.